Hi everybody, welcome back. So what we're going to do today we're going to build a teepee style shelter, and what I have to build that is I have an 8-foot by 8-foot vapor barrier to do that with. I also have my CRK tomahawk that I modified, and I have a small handsaw. Other than that, the only thing I have would be a little bit of rope with me in my pocket and my water bottle. So let's get started. I plan to set up the teepee right about here, and right behind me you can see that this whole area is covered in small little trees that are about 2 inches around that are going to be perfect to build that teepee with. And it'll be really easy for me to get lots of material from the trees that are already down without cutting any new trees down. So let's get started. Ideally what I'm looking for is any trees that are about 2 to 2.5 inches around and that aren't rotten all the way through, that are in half decent shape. And I want those trees to give me a length about that consistent 2 to 2.5 inches around for a minimum of 7 feet. The overall length is a little longer when I cut it off. I can use those cut off pieces a little later in the project. I've selected and cut all my ridge poles. I collected them all together and I put them to where I'm going to build the teepee. To ensure my ridge poles don't poke through the plastic, I'm going to make sure there's nothing sticking out of the pole itself. So I'm going to remove any nubs or branches that are going to be on that. And what I'll do is I'm just going to lightly tap them off with my tomahawk. Now that I got all my ridge poles all smoothed out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the area a little bit so there's no branches or sticks sticking up out of the ground. Now, a lot of the material on the ground is going to be frozen into the ground, so it does take a little bit of work to get it out. As I'm working through the area as well, I'm going to remove any branches that are head level or below, just to make sure I don't get any branches in the face or the eyes. All right, so I just clearing this tree out of the way. It's obviously down, it's dead, it's rotten. And I was cutting a section of the root off right here. And right here, this is all fat wood inside. If you smell it, all you can smell is that turpentine smell. This will burn really hot, it'll burn really fast, and it's really good for getting fires started. So as you can see, if we look a little further up the tree, this is completely rotted out. There's nothing left of it. But inside of our root, what happened was all the sap went inside of the root after it fell down, trying to stay alive. It all got hard in there, and it turns into almost like crystal-y, waxy substance inside, and it smells very much like a fuel. And it's so easy to light that on fire, it's not funny, and that's how you get fat wood. So in all likelihood, this tree came down earlier this year. We had a bunch of big windstorms. This looks like it's fairly fresh. What I'm going to do is I'm going to chop off all these branches so that I can use it for a stool or a seat. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to create my tripod shape. I'm going to tie the top of 3 of them together to give myself a solid base. Once I have that solid base, I'm going to lean a couple more up. I'll probably need 1 or 2 more logs in order to do this, but let's use that to get started, and then we'll have a good idea where we need to add a little more support. So all I'm going to use is I just have a 50-foot hank of bank line, so I'm going to use that to start with. Alright, so depending on how you tie your hanks of rope, it can be really easy to get at your rope. So how I do it is a figure-8 motion to tie it, so that when you go to remove the rope, it's just a matter of pulling it, and that'll get you your lengths out. So I got a couple meters of rope there, so that'll be more than enough to start with. Just going to take my serrated edge knife and give that a quick cut. The other thing you can do with bank line is you can pull the individual strains apart and use those individual strains if you needed to increase the amount of rope you have. But by doing that, you're going to decrease the tensile strength of the rope. What I'm going to do is I'm going to line up all the ends of my sticks so that they're all the exact same length. At that point, I'm going to tie 3 of my sticks together, which is going to be the base for my tripod. Then once all my base is tied together, I'm going to stand it up. So I have this loosely tied right now. I have the top of the TV with 3 sections tied into it. I want to be able to fully stand up in the middle here. So I'm just going to adjust my legs so that I'm going to be able to do that. So what I'll do now that I have the TP standing up, I'm going to add some more sections in and tie those as I go. The initial piece of bank line that I used, I left that quite long and hanging down so that as I went I could tie in those additional ridge poles, tying each one individually to the stack of 3. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our shelter with a tarp on it. To secure the shelter, I have some snare wire. I'm going to use the snare wire to connect to my braces so that it's not going to go anywhere. As I'm putting the plastic up, I very quickly came to realize that the tarp that I have with me isn't going to be big enough. So really quickly, I'm going to run home and come back with another tarp about the exact same size, which will be enough to cover the whole thing. Now that I've returned with a second tarp, I'm going to put the tarps up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some snare wire, feed that through the plastic, and using that to connect it to my ridge poles. Once I've gotten the top ridge poles all connected together, I'll do the exact same thing along the bottom. Alright, so to hold this closed, I'm just going to make a couple slits in here and slide a stick through. Alright, it's winter time. We don't want to be laying on the ground. The ground's going to suck all the heat out of our body. So what we'll do is we'll build a little bit of a raised bed so that we're not laying directly on the ground. The first thing that we're going to need is going to be 2 round logs about 3 inches around. And those logs, we want them to be about a foot longer than what our height is. So for my raised bed, all I did is reach up above my head, make a quick notch. Once I've gotten that notch, I'm going to cut it to that height. I'm going to cut the other side of my bed to the same size. Alright, there's 1/2 cut. I'm going to go grab another log and be right back. What I'm going to do next to attach these together, I'm going to make a notch going into the log, cut it in half, make a notch in the other side, and then I'm going to notch the opposite way on my long pieces so that they lock right in. So I just measured this out on my tomahawk. Right there is going to be 9 inches. Then on the other side right there is going to be 9 inches. So I'm going to cut both of these at 9 inches. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut halfway through the log, and then I'm going to split off that piece where I cut it halfway through. That'll give me a little bit of shelf to put my next log on. So I just measured the diameter of the log off my tomahawk. I measured the same distance down on my post, so I'm going to cut halfway through that post and then notch it out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a flat surface on the log just by cutting a little bit of material off the top. And then I'm going to be able to put my round on top, and it's going to be able to stay there. From there, what I'll do is I'm going to put my round on top of the log, beat on top of my tomahawk, and split that piece I just cut into two separate pieces. My next step is going to be to remove a little bit of material from the log so that it has that flat edge to line up on. I'm then going to repeat that process for all four ends. Now that we have everything all cut out into the proper size, we'll move everything into the teepee and start to construct our bed. What we'll do for each corner is we'll set all of our supports on and we'll tie them all together. What I'm going to do to help tie everything all together, I'm going to notch one side and be able to put that rope into that little notch to help secure it there in place. I'll then repeat this process for all four ends. So what I've done is with my cut here and the notch that I have here, that's the right size that I want for my bed, so I'm just using that as a quick reference to cut my logs as quickly as I can. For the main part of my raised bed, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the little 2-inch sticks that I cut off. I'm going to lay those across the whole length of it so that I have a flat and level surface to lay down on that's going to be off the ground. It'll allow me to keep my core body temperature a lot higher, and throughout the entire night it'll make me a lot more comfortable as well. So I did sleep in the teepee last night to help keep me warm. I started a fire outside, heated up a bunch of rocks. I then put them underneath my raised bed, which helped radiate heat upwards on the knee. So I was relatively comfortable last night, even with the clothes that I just had on. We got a little bit of snow last night, so the sides of the teepee are a little bit covered in snow. But all in all, this has been a pretty good experience. Luckily, I don't kind of turn over a whole lot while I'm sleeping. I made this pretty much the exact height or the exact width of my shoulders. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and hit the bell notification to get notified every time that I drop a video. Alright, so I thought we got about an inch of snow last night. It looks like it was only about a 1/4 inch. You can see that there's a little bit all over the place. There's still a whole bunch all over the teepee. But I'm about 300 meters into the woods right now. So I'm going to start heading back to my house. See you later, everybody.